Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Noreen Jalal, and I'm a developer educator here at Vonage. And I am so thrilled to be back on Twitch with you today with a very special guest. Paris Athena is here with us. Paris is creator of the movement and community Black Tech Twitter and founder of Black Tech Pipeline. Black Tech Pipeline is a service-based platform that brings exposure, resources, and opportunities to Black technologists and their allies. With a strong focus on retention, Paris connects employers to candidates within her community and works with those companies on their diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Today, we'll be talking about everything from getting into tech, even if it isn't your passion, or rather fusing your passions with tech, being underrepresented in the industry, Paris's experiences with having a platform on Twitter and authentically maintaining and growing that presence, as well as what it's like to juggle a full-time job and life as an entrepreneur. I can imagine it can get quite hectic sometimes. So I also welcome you, our viewers, to ask any relevant questions you may have and share any thoughts on any of the topics that we discussed in chat. We'd love to hear from you. Paris, thank you so much for joining us today. It is so great to have you.
Oh, I'm excited to be on.
Amazing. So I first came to learn of you when I came across a post on Twitter that was a part of the Black Tech Twitter movement. Now, we'll be talking more about that in a bit, but before we do, could you share a bit more about you and perhaps take us back to the start of your journey in tech? I understand that you've also taken what some would consider to be a non-traditional path into tech.
Yep. Yeah. So I was a wax specialist who was also I was trying to get my associate's degree. And when I basically finished my associate's degree when I found out that coding existed. And I found that out because of my brother. He was really young at the time, like in middle school, and he was learning to code in school as part of the curriculum. And Obama was also in office at this time, and he was also really pushing for people to learn about programming and getting into the industry. And so I just became curious. I'm like, why is everyone talking about coding? Like, what is it? And so I spoke to my brother's principal, and I was asking him, why are kids learning to code right now? It just seems like it's something for college students or really, really smart people out there. I don't know. I didn't know what it was. So he was explaining to me how people are being replaced by machines. People are losing jobs to machines. If you don't have a technological background, you're probably going to get left behind because we're in a digital-driven era. And so when he said that, like, it was true. After thinking about it, I was like, it's true that people are being replaced by machines because I was a wax specialist, waxing body hair, and I was losing clientele to laser hair removal. Now, is waxing going to go away, in the next year? Like, no. But, eventually, yeah, my job could have been affected eventually. So I was like, all right, like I should really learn some type of skill set that's going to allow me to get into the industry. And so I got into a boot camp called Resilient Coders, which is based in Boston. And they teach and pay people of color to code from underserved communities. And so I quit my full-time job as a wax specialist so that I could dedicate full-time to learning front-end web development, because they taught HTML, CSS, and JavaScript within 8 weeks. And then the rest of the program was like another 3 months of doing an apprenticeship. And then after that, people would go off and get jobs or internships. And so that's what happened. Went through the boot camp, graduated, went into an internship, and kind of went off from there.
That's amazing. What an incredible story. Definitely, I feel like, more and more things are being replaced by machines. And even though it feels like we're kind of in a good place right now, just knowing how to code and, being really skilled in that, I wonder how soon it is that, that skill will even be replaced, and that'll be replaced by machines, and we'll have to continue to upscale and continue to build on that to kind of just stay, relevant, right?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I'm like, everything's being automated. Like, there are so many no-code tools now. And I'm like, I don't know what's ever going to happen, with programmers, if we're ever going to be affected in that way, or specifically web developers. I don't know. But I do think it is important to continue upping your skill set and maybe even getting into or learning more about different fields aside from, web development.
Absolutely. We actually have a question in chat. Lauren asks, what was your internship? Like, what is one that you had?
Yeah, so I had an internship at an ad agency in Boston. It's a really big one. And so I was in the information and technology department. And there is where I learned React Native. And I learned what it's like to like be like a developer on a team, because I came from a boot camp, right? So I'm like with a cohort, it's very different. Everyone's sort of like same, level playing field. It's all the same. And then you get into this different environment. It's like you have to do testing. You have to, there's stand up there. I mean, there's all these things that I just didn't know went into the job. And that's where I learned it, which was great. I'm really happy that I took an internship before kind of jumping straight into a job. Because that gave me a place where I could comfortably sort of mess up and then get ready from there. Once I was finished with the internship, jump into like that full-time job, understanding what it's like to be on a team, and sort of like how that whole process comes together in terms of collaborating with different departments and, so yeah.
Absolutely. I actually went to a boot camp as well, and you're so right on that. Like, you come out and you're taught to be super confident in the skills that you have because they're amazing. Like, you didn't know this like 9 weeks ago or 12 weeks ago or however long it was. But there's so much that they can't possibly teach you unless you're working in the field. Like, I had no clue what Agile was. I had no clue what it was like to be a junior developer and be exposed to like code bases and things like that. Everything I'd ever built was from scratch myself. And it was only, it only did so much. And then that was it. And I started a new project. So
exactly.
Right. Totally different experience.
Yeah.
Do you think it's harder now for people to enter the industry than when you did or when we did?
I don't. I don't think so. It's really hard to say since I don't have to go through it myself. But no, what I feel like is happening, and I could be wrong. I just feel like more and more people are getting exposed to the importance of getting into the tech industry and the importance of learning a skill set and specifically programming. And I feel like there's a lot, it kind of feels like Hollywood where everyone kind of wants to come in, be an actress, get famous. It kind of feels like everyone's trying to like get in there now. But at the same time, there are so many jobs hiring. It's so hard to fill roles. Like, I don't feel like it's so competitive to the point where it's like, you know what, I just can't do this. Like, there's no room for me in this industry. There is. But yeah, no.
No, I totally agree. Because I also teach web development here in Toronto, and my students are always like, I see like new boot camps like pop up everywhere. They're online. They're here in Toronto. Like, how am I supposed to compete with these other students? Like, I feel like I know nothing, and it's true. You definitely feel that imposter syndrome at the very beginning because they're not so limited. And I just tell them like, more and more jobs are popping up every single day. Like, there's never going to be a shortage of these skills. And once you enter the industry, like, you're going to keep learning. Like, you are interested in this, you're good at it. Like, I'm sure you're going to want to upskill and, just make sure that you continue doing that. Like, continuous learning is so important in this industry.
Right.
If you have that skill, if you know how to do that, like, you'll be just fine. Like,
right.
Just, getting it. I think that's like the biggest hurdle.
There will always be jobs. People are always going to be hiring. It's just not going to end. So I think you're pretty safe.
Did you find that there was like a way that you distinguished yourself from your peers, like when you were going through the application process, that you think, might help some people now?
No, I don't. I think I'm going to be honest. Like, I always got jobs through my network. I always kind of utilized my network. So if I knew someone that was working at a company, like, hey, are you hiring? Can you sort of put in a referral for me or something like that? That's always how it worked for me. Or people would reach out to me and say, my job's hiring. Are you interested in, applying? I would apply. And then they have their name on the application as well as a referral. So you get to go into the interview, probably a little faster. I just utilize the network. I swear. That's like the best thing. Yeah.
Don't be shy to do that. And even if it's someone that you don't know, that's someone outside your network, it's a friend of a friend, or it's a total stranger. Like, I feel it's so critical to just, be brave and just go for it. Message them, shoot them a cold message, or, ask them to have a quick chat with you. And like, you never know where that takes you. Right.
Right. I feel like this is probably true for every industry. I really do feel like it's about who you know. So yeah, please do not be shy because no one else is being shy about it.
Absolutely. We have another question. What are your best tips on building a network?
Ooh, I think so this is me personally because I'm a very shy person. I don't like going to meetups and then walking up to someone and trying to start a conversation. That's just not me. I love social media, and you can just utilize social media that way. And when you get onto social media, follow people, who are maybe doing the same thing you're trying to do, or, they're in the industry you're trying to get into. Follow them on social media, interact with them, reply to their posts, start conversations, kind of build that relationship, make yourself known that, not only are you active, but you're paying attention to what they're saying.
Mm-hmm.
And they might post opportunities that are coming by that you can take advantage of. And the fact that you've been so active on their platform, it kind of gives you maybe some sort of like special attention. I don't know, just you have to utilize, at least, especially now since everything's remote, but utilize social media, be active, be consistent, and engage. Yeah.
Yeah, and I can't stress that enough personally. I think my first ever development job, I gotten through Indeed or Monster or something like that. But every other opportunity since then has either been through Twitter.
Yeah.
Tech is such a massive thing on Twitter, or Slack channels, which I also wasn't exposed to before, entering the tech industry. So yeah.
Right. Yeah. And social media, that's where you're going to learn about all these organizations and communities that you didn't know existed. And you have access to them because that's the beauty of the internet. It gets to connect you with people you wouldn't like normally meet in person. So, join their communities and do the same thing, engage, create those relationships. And it kind of just works that way. You create a chain. That's your network.
Absolutely. Well, while we're on the topic of social media, how did Black Tech Twitter come to be?
Yeah, so Black Tech Twitter happened super unintentionally. When I got onto Twitter, I noticed that there was a really small community of Black technologists. And I've never worked with someone who looked like me once I entered the industry. So for me, I was just like, oh, there's probably just not a lot of Black people in the industry. And then when I got onto Twitter, I noticed that there were. Again, the beauty of the internet, it exposes you to things you didn't know existed. So I put out a tweet asking, what does Black Twitter, because Black Twitter is its own thing, what does Black Twitter in tech look like? I put that tweet out. I didn't expect anything to come from it since I was really new to Twitter. And that tweet just sort of took off. It took off. It went semi-viral. Black technologists from all over the world posted themselves into the tweet, created this really long thread of their pictures and what they're doing in the industry. And pretty much overnight, it created this community, Black Tech Twitter. And people connected and they did their own thing, built their relationships. We have a community now.
That's incredible. And it's so amazing to see how, something that wasn't intentional could blow up so quickly and so massively, right? Makes a impact in so many lives. Can you tell us what's been happening in that community since you created it? Has it taken a life on its own, or do you kind of go in and facilitate discussions and things like that?
No, Black Tech Twitter, it's grown to the point, there are people who don't even know where Black Tech Twitter came from. They just know it exists, which is the point. That's how big you want it to get that big, especially when it's of a community that is underrepresented in this industry. It's great that it's gotten that big and people are just like, oh, wow, there's a community of people who look like me. That's not only the power of the internet and Twitter, but it's just that's what you want. And yeah, I have a Slack community, a Discord community for Black Tech Twitter. I have Black Tech Pipeline to serve Black Tech Twitter. People have done their own things where they're, putting on conferences for Black Tech Twitter. They're doing talks about Black Tech Twitter. Yeah, it's just gotten big, and I'm not sort of facilitating anything. It's doing its own thing. It runs by itself. So, I mean, it's a community, so it's driven by the community.
Exactly. That's amazing. You mentioned Black Tech Pipeline stem from this community. What exactly does that platform do, and how do they kind of relate?
Yeah, so Black Tech Pipeline came about literally when Black Tech Twitter came into existence from the tweet. Employers they noticed that there was this new hashtag, there's this community forming, and they started DMing me on Twitter, and they were like, hey, we saw there's just this new community of Black technologists. We didn't know there were so many of you in the industry. Would you mind recruiting some of your candidates into our pipelines? And that was something that was continuously happening where employees were reaching out to me. And so that I was like, sure, yeah, I'll recruit. I didn't think recruiting would be too hard. So I went in, I created my own talent application, my own talent database, and I started recruiting candidates from there into all these different pipelines. And that was going, what I thought it was going really well because people were getting jobs. And so that was the point. And then later on I started hearing, oh, thanks for recruiting me, but like it wasn't the right opportunity. I didn't like the environment. And, people were going through sort of the same things I went through, where it's just not a very inclusive environment. They're trying to diversify without inclusivity, right?
Right.
And so for me, it's like, wow, I'm sending people into these harmful spaces. Like, what does that say about me and my intentions? Like, that's awful, right? So what I did was I created this recruitment package now. And this is where Black Tech Pipeline comes in. So anytime someone gets hired out of Black Tech Pipeline, I would virtually stay on the job with them for the first 90 days. And so what that looks like is I would do biweekly check-ins with those candidates to see how's it going? What's your experience been like? Are you happy? Do you have the tools and resources necessary to do well in your role? And I would take the feedback that I got from that candidate, relay it to their manager or someone in leadership, and we would go through, this is what this candidate needs. This is how they feel. This is how, these are the next steps we're going to take. This is how we're going to do it. And the whole point of that is to really help this company not only diversify, because diversifying, that's just like, it's almost performative, right? You need to think about that equity and inclusivity piece. And that's what I work with them on, so that they're being actionable. And that's how Black Tech Pipeline came to be what it is.
That's incredible. And that sounds like such a beast to take on as well. Like, do you still find time to code alongside with that, or is that
my gosh. I'm going to be honest, I haven't done a lot of programming for a long time. Before Black Tech Twitter came about, my goal was to become like an amazing engineer. And then this really took over. Like, I had to leave a job because it was too much to handle. And I just felt like the work I'm doing with Black Tech Pipeline is more impactful than, programming. And DE&I is something I'm also very passionate about. And it's something that it's a big conversation within my own family. So taking it on wasn't like, an issue at all. So the only programming I do now is by building out the Black Tech Pipeline website, which is launching in a couple of weeks.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Well, that's always a dream, isn't it? Like, when you have a side hustle you're really passionate about, and it actually takes off to the point where, you can quit your 9-to-5 and focus on that passion. Like, that's always, I think, the dream. So it's amazing that you're able to achieve that. And,
Thank you.
It seems like as well. So you mentioned, like, a lot of companies do put an emphasis on hiring diverse candidates, but the focus should really be on what happens next, like creating that culture that, makes these individuals feel like safe and supported and valued and heard. Is there any advice you have for leadership at companies that you think that they could do that could help with retention and creating that environment?
Yeah, so it's a little difficult. Like, I think like having an external HR, which is what I try to be to these companies, I think there's something so valuable about it, because when you have an external HR, they're here for the employees and they're also here for the company, but they're not choosing, one isn't priority over the other. And I think what happens is, these companies, you come in, you sign NDAs, you go through and you find out it's not a good experience. You want to talk about it. And what happens a lot is people get let go because they're complaining about the culture. They're not happy. And then when you get let go, you can't talk about it. You sign an NDA, there needs to be a change in policies, current systems and processes. Like, you need to break that down. And because there's bias in there, there's bias, there's racism, there's all of that. You need to break it down with a professional, like a DE&I consultant, someone who does this work full time. This is what they do. Break it down with them, see where you can make those improvements. And then again, DE&I is not something where it's like you go take a workshop and then you're done. It's like, yeah, I got it. I fixed everything. It doesn't work that way.
So true.
Right. Diversity, equity, inclusion is something it's a practice, and it's a practice that you do for as long as that company exists. Until the company is ran into the ground and rotten and dead, it has to die with it, right? It's something you practice from the foundation up when you build up the culture and until the company is no more. So it's forever.
Absolutely. No, it's definitely so paramount. It feels like with the Black Lives Matter movement getting more and more awareness, a lot of companies have wanted to or felt pressured to invest into more D&I initiatives. Have you come across any such initiatives that you think work well, and some that maybe weren't as effective that you think others can learn from?
Yeah, so I'll start with the ones that don't work well are the ones who are only focusing on diversifying. For them, it's like, all right, we have to do something. Like, there's another movement happening. What are we gonna do? And you just focus on bringing in something that looks like you're a diverse company. Which again, diversifying, I personally feel like that's just the easiest thing to do, right? Keeping people there, keeping them happy, that's the hardest thing to do, especially when you are a person who doesn't have to experience what it's like to be them daily in and out of work. And so you need to hire, again, like you need to bring in professionals who do the work, and bring in people who understand that culture. They understand that background. And I'm not saying it has to be a Black person. It has to be someone, who comes, it understands what it's like to be from an underserved community, and they understand the trials and tribulations of being like a person of color, especially Black and brown. Like it's hard, right? And so you want to bring in someone who understands that. But again, it's a professional who does the work full time. That's who you have to bring in. And I think that's just what works well. And it's really hard when these companies, they've already kind of built up this culture, right? And then they want to bring someone in who is diverse. And they also want to do well in terms of inclusifying and being equitable and things like that. But it's hard when you've already established this culture that's been that way for a really long time. It's really hard to change that. It's especially hard when you don't really have the excitement and the approval from higher ups, like the C-level executives. Like when you don't have them on board either, it's even more difficult. And so this is something I noticed from bigger companies, honestly. I think what works well, and for a lot of companies it's too late, is when you're building this in at the foundation. Like you're thinking about DE&I at the foundation of the company, and that's how you're building it up, with that as a priority. Yeah,
absolutely. I know we have a lot of allies tuning in today. Are there any resources that you think they could share with leadership at their companies, or is there anything you think that they can do today to actually make an impact in this and help change things?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I mean, there's so many different resources. I feel like I'd have to make a list, like write it out. There's so many different newsletters, and there's newsletters, there's books, there's workshops, there's people to follow on Twitter. I mean, there's conferences that are dedicated to people of color, even just specifically like Black and brown technologists. It's a whole list. I would have to write this down. I would say, oh, sorry, go ahead.
That could be a good Twitter thread, right?
Yes. It's a nice long thread.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I'll encourage everyone to follow you on Twitter so we can look out for that, and hopefully share that far and wide as well. So I know, just going back to tech not being your primary passion, you're really vocal about tech and like programming itself, I guess, not being your primary passion per se. I also wouldn't consider it to be mine necessarily. I think I'm far more passionate about like empowering people with technical education, and creating the communities that help them feel, supported and enable them to grow and help them instill that confidence to chase new opportunities. And thankfully, I landed in developer relations, which feels like such a good fit for that. But how are you fusing like your other passions with tech? Like, you started off in a totally different industry. Is there any other way that you're able to do that?
Yeah. So for me, my dream was to be a film and a screenwriter. I wanted to write like major motion pictures, write the scripts. I wanted to be an actress. And so I think what I really love is like, I love editing videos and I love writing, right? So getting into tech allowed me to, in order to fuse it, what I did was like, anytime I learned something new, I would write a blog post on it. And I would write it in a way that I felt like was, easy to understand, easy to learn. It was sort of entertaining. I could add whatever pictures I wanted, or images, I mean. And so I still got that writing piece. Like, I can still be creative in my writing, even if it is technical. And then for doing videos, and I still want to do this, I haven't tried it yet, but I could create a YouTube channel. And a lot of people are doing this now, even doing streams and podcasts and things like that, where, I can sort of just film myself, edit my own videos, talking about being in tech or how I'm learning a certain framework. It could be anything. So you can still fuse everything you're doing within the industry, but outside of that, you know, you can kind of like, if you learn programming, you can go and still work for like Hollywood executives looking for an application that allows, I don't know, easier ways to get permits to set up filming things in your city. I don't know. It could be anything, really. You can, like with programming, you could literally take it anywhere to any industry at all. You could take it to YouTube, the beauty industry, whatever you want. And I think that's the beauty, because everything needs tech. Everything that's necessary, it's just necessary. So you can take it anywhere.
Exactly. It's so versatile. And that's what I try and always tell my students as well. Like, maybe you're not loving what we're learning right now, but you love these companies and you love working with certain types of industries, and you'll be able to do that and at a much, better position and a much higher pay and compensation than you would if you didn't take this route. So it just really opens up so many doors for you.
Right.
What advice would you give to folks that also don't consider tech to be their primary passion, but who may be unsure or feeling dejected about whether or not they belong in the industry? Is there anything that kind of kept you going during hard times?
Yeah. For me, actually, what really kept me going, I already knew programming wasn't going to ever be my passion. I knew that from before I even did it. But for me, like, again, I knew I could fuse it with what I do love. And so for me, I actually thought of a personal project. There's like, I have my job, my 9 to 5, and then I would go home and work on my personal project, which was a mobile app, right? And I thought this mobile app was going to be my golden egg, make me a billionaire and everything. But that's like what kept me going. I'm like, oh my God, like I have this really good idea. I'm going to build it out. And I don't know, it kept me driven. And it had nothing to do with my job. That was my thing. And I was excited to come home and do that. After a long day of programming at work, I'd come home and program on something I was super passionate about. And again, that's the beauty of programming. You can think of an idea, and everyone always has ideas, and you can build it out yourself. You don't have to pay anyone. You can do it because you have that skill set. Think of something you're passionate about. It could be anything. Maybe it's music, maybe it's acting. I don't know. But again, you can go home and build it yourself.
Exactly. And the harder you work and the more you learn, like the better you're able to make that, right? So I guess just envisioning that future and envisioning what these skills can, enable you to do is just so key in moments like that, right? Like nothing lasts forever. It's a bad day. It's not going to be a bad career, hopefully, because there are just so many opportunities in it. So yeah.
Yeah. And I think the other thing is, like, for me, even if I didn't love what I was doing at my 9 to 5, I knew that I was learning at my 9 to 5. And in order to become a better developer, you have to continue building and learning. So whatever I was learning at work, I'll be like, oh my God, I can actually use that for my app that I'm building. I would take that knowledge, go home and, implement that. And that's how it works. Yeah.
Amazing. So I know you do a lot of, sharing what you're working on Twitter, and you're able to continue to like grow and maintain that presence while being authentic. Like it doesn't seem like you kind of filter yourself too much. Like you're being really authentic and true to yourself. How do you establish credibility as a professional, and just establish credibility in general by doing that? Like I think some people feel like they have to maintain a very professional presence, or they have to have certain opinions on something, and keep things like really politically correct or whatnot. Like how do you think people should kind of navigate that?
Yeah. It's hard because it's really up to the individual and the type of person you are. For me, I think I don't know if this sounds privileged because I already have this platform. But I honestly just kind of feel like just be yourself, just be authentic, be transparent. Don't be a bully, but I don't know. I think people can read through BS. Like, there are times where I'll go on Twitter and I'll see, the same types of people saying the same types of like things they're very like positive and motivating, but it's like that all the time. It's like, what's it like when you have a bad day? Like, I just want to know that, because not everything is like cherries and apples all the time. And so you can't be afraid to have a different opinion. Again, I say that like it really depends. Um, like, I don't know, you gotta just be yourself. Like, you're gonna lose followers. Everyone loses followers. It's just what it is. People appreciate different takes, different approaches, different mindsets. Like, be that diverse opinion, be that diverse person. Like, that's what makes the world so dope. It's like everyone's different and you're contributing your own background, your own experiences, your own thoughts to it. And that's what kind of makes the world just what it is. Just it's so corny to say it, just be yourself. You can't be scared. Like, you just, I don't know.
No, I absolutely love that. And especially being real, like, you don't know how that helps other people, right? Because it's true, like, what we see on social media is such a highlight reel. And especially for, tech Twitter, a lot of people use it just professionally, and they're just kind of talking about, the professional achievements, but they're not really as vocal about, the times when things aren't working out, whether it be with code or their career, or, and I feel like it's just so encouraging when you're in a place like that and you kind of look on social and you see other people that you look up to also sharing that, sentiment.
Right.
Kinship.
Yeah, that's human. That's literally reality. It's like you have good days and bad days. There's some things you're good at, there's some things you're bad at. And people want to see that because they want to know you're human too. I can relate to you. I don't, if you look up to someone and everything that they post is always like, it's something positive, they achieve something. It's like, damn, I don't think I'm ever going to get there. I don't know how they did it. Like, I don't know. There's just something really human and special about, seeing someone for who they are and just living in reality. And reality is there's ups and downs. And we want to see that. People just appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, it feels like social media on its own can be, a full-time job, especially when, you're really active on it like you are, and then you kind of use it for other things that you're working on, like Black Tech Pipeline. How do you manage like a full-time job in Black Tech Pipeline and all the other things that you do in your various entrepreneurship initiatives?
Yeah, so it is really, really difficult, I will say. So, like, thankfully, my 9 to 5 is flexible, where it's not like you have to work literally 9 to 5. It's like, as long as you're getting the job done, that's what really matters. So I know that's not it. That's not what it is for everyone.
Yeah.
I think, like, being an entrepreneur means you're gonna be working 10 times harder than someone who's just working a 9 to 5, right? So that means after 9 to 5, you're working like 5 to 1 a.m. I don't know. Maybe you don't sleep, but that's kind of like the entrepreneur life. And it is difficult and it is stressful, but I think you should definitely, like, take breaks, like, go spoil yourself one day. I don't know. I'm also not a fan of, like, the hustle culture where it's like, don't do anything until you succeeded. Like, don't spend this, don't do that. For me, it's like, do whatever the hell you want, as long as you're putting time into, this passion project of yours as an entrepreneur, obviously maintaining your 9 to 5 so that you can take that investment and invest it back into your passion project, then do that. Everyone's different. There's no rules to the game. Do it the way you want, obviously you have to be active and consistent, but, like, again, be human, go relax, get a spa day. I don't know. Just, yeah.
Do you think self-care is something that new entrepreneurs forget to prioritize, or are there other things that they also like forget to prioritize that, you almost wish that you could like point out to them?
There are things that I see. So I'm just not one that I just don't do that. So for me, like, one day, unfortunately, you're going to be off of this earth and think your time here is going to end. Mm-hmm. And so personally, for me, like, my priorities are my friends and family, the people I love, and taking care of myself. So if I can have a spa day instead of working on my passion project, I'm going to the spa day, and that's just what it is. And then I'll work on my passion project the next day. I don't know. I feel like self-care is just so important. And, like, when you're not taking care of yourself and you're burning yourself out, like, that's going to show in your work. And if you have a passion project, you don't want that to be there. You don't want to do sloppy work. So you have to take care of yourself. You have to take breaks. And when you're happy, again, that shows in your work. It shows that you're excited.
And you want to
Yeah,
enjoy the process as well, right? Like these are passions that you're working on. You're trying to make amazing things happen. You want
right.
to, have that bandwidth for yourself to be able to, kind of use some downtime and take care of yourself and then, come back like happy and excited to work on your passions.
Exactly.
It's so important. What are some of your personal productivity hacks? So during those times when you're working hard, like, is there anything that helps you? Any apps or, just any like tips and habits and tricks and things like that that help you?
People are gonna think this is weird, but like I love listening to ASMR. Like I listen to ASMR all the time. I will like it feels like I'm like just like either coding or doing whatever I'm doing for Black Tech Pipeline and I'm not breathing because
Mhm.
I'm just so focused. But I'm also listening to ASMR. Like I listen to ASMR hair cutting or hair brushing. And it's really soothing sounds and it relaxes me, but it allows me to also just like focus. And like by the time I noticed it, it's been like 5 hours that passed by and I didn't know, you know?
Mhm.
Um, that's me personally. I know a lot of people might think that's odd though.
No, that's so awesome. I want to try it because I've tried like classical music before and like those white noise machines where they kind of just have like rainforest sounds and stuff. But that's always really distracting to me for some reason. Whereas I feel
Yeah,
like, hair brushing or what you said would be like more soothing. So that's really
right.
interesting. Do you listen to like other ones as well, or is it usually like aesthetic themed?
It's definitely that. I also watch, well, I don't listen to this actually when I code. I watch mukbangs. I don't know how to pronounce it, but
Or like eating
um
food?
the food. Yeah, I'll do that. I'll listen to the or not listen, I'll watch it. So I don't watch that in work, but for working, it's strictly like ASMR, hair brushing or hair cutting.
That is so amazing. I'm gonna have to give that a try.
Yeah, try it. It's so tingly. It's nice.
And we have someone saying that they love some coffee shop white noise. Those are always really good too.
Yeah.
It's a good balance, I think.
Hmm.
So, going back to entrepreneurship, how do you think a new entrepreneur can tell if their idea is worth pursuing? Like, how did you decide to move ahead with your idea? Was it, very clear from the very beginning, or did you have to go through like a pro and con list? Like, how did you make that decision?
Is this for my mobile app or Black Tech Pipeline? Because those are two different.
Mm, both. Can you?
Okay. Um, for my mobile app that I was super passionate about,
Mm-hmm.
I I kind of just went into it. I was like, I was told that I should test that idea first. First, see if it exists, right? Because if it exists and there's a market for it, that means like there's a market for it. So yeah, like that's proven right there that it's something that's necessary, right? Um, and looking at competitors and things like that and what you can do differently. Um, for me, like I did my research, but I just built it. I didn't care. I didn't care what anyone said. I don't care if there is no market for it. I'm gonna build it because people are gonna love it anyway. Um, now, if I were to go back and do it, I think I would see if there's a market for it, and I would do that through polls, through forums online. Um, because the last thing you want to do is waste time and especially actually time and money building something that no one asked for, nobody wants. It's just not necessary. It's not solving a huge problem. You want to test. You want to do testing beforehand before you get started. Um, and then for Black Tech Pipeline, that was something it was being asked of me consistently. And so I was like, all right, well, this is, and I knew it was a need because I never worked with anyone who looked like me. Obviously, I knew that, there's no Black people, a lot of Black people didn't know there were so many Black people in the industry. So this is a huge problem. So that was like, I didn't have to test it. I just knew it was there. So it's two different approaches. But yeah, I hope that's helpful.
No, definitely. I definitely think that is. Are there any like highs and lows that you experience as an entrepreneur? Because I know it can be more extreme for the entrepreneur than when you're working for someone else's company. It almost feels like, that level of investment is never quite there. Like it's your baby when it's your own
Right.
product or your own company. So like, what are some of the highs and lows that you've experienced, and would you want to share some of those with us?
Yeah. I will say with Black Tech Pipeline, so when Black Tech Pipeline was born, or I created Black Tech Pipeline, I was working at a different company than I am now. And I knew, like, it was, first of all, it was getting overwhelming. So I knew I was going to have to leave anyway. But also, the work that I was doing at that company, it just didn't, it no longer felt important. Like, it didn't feel impactful. Right. And I wasn't excited about it. And I was like, oh, like I'm gonna be building out like this component when I could be like helping someone get a job and improving the problems within this industry. And it was like this, black tech pipeline, building out a component, not important. That's just what it was for me.
Mhm.
And so yeah, and then like staying motivated, especially when you're super excited about your passion project, like it's just hard to sort of focus at work. It's hard to put in that same time and energy into whatever tasks you have to get done.
Mhm.
There were times where I would sit at my desk, I'm like, I'm just gonna get up and walk out. Like, because I felt like I can't, like I literally felt like, I'm not supposed to be here. I'm supposed to be doing something else. And I think that's really normal. And I think a lot of people go through that. For me, again, like you kind of have to think about what are the pros of staying at this job, right? You're going to learn more, you're going to up your skill set, and you're going to get money to pay your bills and do whatever else you need to do with your money. And then you have the time to go home, invest time and energy into your passion project. And you want to get it to a point where it's like, maybe you feel safe leaving your job. It's really depends on where you want to take this project.
Mhm.
But no, yeah. I mean, for me, I felt like I got depressed a lot, just all the time. I was like, I just don't want to be here. I don't want to be doing this work. It's not important to me. Like I want to be doing what I want to do. Um, and that feeling, it gets really, really overwhelming. Um, yeah, I don't know. That
It helps you deal with those feelings. I think regardless of where we are, like we do come across feelings like that and, like self-doubt and, wondering whether or not we're, headed somewhere worthwhile. Like how do you personally deal with that?
Yeah. So whether I know I'm heading in the right direction.
Yeah, just those like really like what feels like real lows and, not
Mhm.
being sure of yourself or your place in this industry or what
Mhm.
you're doing and whether or not like you're actually making an impact at the end of the day.
Yeah. So I like to make plans. Like I make lists. I make plans. I do research, and I'm like, okay. And it's almost like a spider web of like, if I go this route, what would happen? If I go this route, what would happen? I
Mhm.
love doing that all the time, and I'll do it in my head mostly. But it's better to write it down. So for me, it's like, okay, if I invest time into this and this and this for like my passion project, and I can get it here, and I can get, I'm not saying I do this, but if I can get investments from here, like I'm thinking of all these different routes I have to take to get to that place that would allow me to actually leave my job, right? So I have to have mini goals. There's the broader big goal, but what are the mini goals to get there? And that's what keeps me going. It's like, all right, I can check this off the list. I can check that off the list. Make mini goals. Like you have to make your own roadmap. And at every place of that roadmap, there's mini goals to get you to like that, your big destination.
Mhm.
Um, that's what worked for me. It kept me motivated. I'm like, all right, I'm almost at this mini goal. After that one, get to this one.
Mhm.
I don't know, making those little spider webs, just find out which route you think is going to work best and go for it. Make mini goals.
That is such good advice. I'm a planner as well, and I tend to find that I do that a lot, like especially when I'm feeling overwhelmed and I'm like, I don't know like what I'm doing. Like today sucked and like I don't know how I'm gonna change this. So I kind of just, do what you said and like, think through things and how am I gonna get myself out of this place and what are some things that I can do now that will help me reach the next step that will, get me out of here basically. So
Right. And also you need to think about like the sacrifices you need to make and what's going to happen if you take advantage of, this thing versus this thing. You have to really think about those things.
yeah,
What are you willing to let go of? What are you willing to sacrifice? Like that's going to be also another big topic on your journey. And you have to be willing to do it because that's just what it takes to kind of accomplish that big dream of yours. So,
right.
yeah.
Sometimes it just comes down to that. Like sometimes you just have to grind and, pay
Hmm.
it almost, feels like. So yeah,
Right.
absolutely. Um, I know we have a couple of questions in chat, kind of been ignoring this. So let me get back to here and see what we have. So, hey, it's Shaddai says, I found you through Black Tech Twitter. Any advice on self-learning or boot camps for front-end web development? Boot camps are so expensive and I can't really afford one right now.
Yeah. So there's definitely like free tools online. I mean, like I think the biggest one, like everyone knows, Free Code Camp maybe. I think like starting there, but there are so many different courses you can take, and ones that you'll have to pay for, but they're nowhere near the price of a boot camp or like a 4-year degree. Take out, you have to do the research again. Is like going onto Google, free tools for learning front end web development. You can just look up tools for learning front end web development. You may have to pay for some, others are free. Just take as much advantage of those as you can, and you have to really put in that time to learn. So like with Free Code Camp, like I went through a boot camp, but I still wanted to I always go back to the fundamentals. So like I will do a problem like 3 times in a row. I'll get it right and I'll go back to it and do it over and over again, because that's just how I learn. It's like a sponge almost. So you have to find out how you best learn, because it may be that, you're the type who actually needs an instructor, someone who you're going to see in person or even virtually, but something that's going to hold you accountable and really have you sit down and do the work. Some people really do need that. That's just how they learn. And that may be an investment that, you might want to take advantage of, because if you're going to get into tech, you'll eventually make that salary where you can pay it back. If you don't want to do that, you have to there's so much self-discipline necessary, where, cut out timeframes of your day where you're going to be learning certain things. What are you going to be going back to? Are you best at taking notes? Are you best at watching videos? Are you best at doing practice rounds? I don't know. You have to find out what type of learner you are. And again, you have to really be disciplined and put in that time and energy and focus. And there are free tools out there. They do exist. You just got to take advantage of them. And it's really up to you as an individual. How badly do you want it? You'll know because you'll see it in your work.
Absolutely. I actually gave that a try myself, because I was working in a legal organization while I decided that, I'm going to try out this coding thing and see if it's for me. And when, I was doing a couple just after work stuff, and it seemed really cool and I wanted to learn more. So I quit my job. And then once I had actually quit my job and I gave myself 6 months to learn this stuff, I found that I really lacked that discipline. I was like, I know I need to get this because I need a job. I quit mine. This is it for me. I need to pay rent in a few months.
Right.
But I just found that, I needed that environment. I needed people around me that were learning at the same time. I needed a person that I could ask questions to. So a lot of boot camps do have ISAs now, the income sharing agreement that you can do, right? Which are also a good option. If you find that you need that, but if not, as you said, all of these resources are available online. You could learn to be a full-on software engineer, be very skilled in this, just from those resources and reading documents.
Right. And you can get a job. You can be self-taught off of free tools and get a job. Anything is possible here. It doesn't matter which route you take. Again, this is really up to you, how you learn, and again, your discipline and your motivation. So anything's possible.
Make it what you want to make it, right?
Exactly.
So I know that we are almost at time. So I just want to ask you one last question on how you find motivation again and again. What drives you forward in all of your efforts? I know you touched on, just being really focused on your end goal, but is there something that, you do on a day-to-day, or, something that you think people would, also be able to kind of do that might help them with this?
In terms of getting into tech,
or just, you're obviously such a successful woman in tech, and you've done so much in the time that you've joined the industry. Is there something that, you kind of go to that just helps you find that motivation again and again, and, just keeps you moving forward? How do you just drive yourself forward? Is it knowing that end goal, or is there something else that, kind of helps with that?
Yeah. It's hard. So With Black Tech Pipeline, that's just always like, I'm a Black woman, so I am forced to experience the lows of you know, being Black outside of tech. Like, I'm just a Black woman, right? So I always have to have certain experiences, and those drive me really out of like anger. You know, I'm like, this is not okay. There is no reason why anyone should be experiencing this because of how they look. Like, it's just ridiculous. That keeps, like, literally, it's just anger. Anger keeps me going in that regard. Like, I am so passionate about diversity, equity, inclusion. And I just am. It's just what it is. And it's due to not only my experiences, but hearing other people's experiences. I'm like, this is not okay. And I'm going to do what I can to change it. Right. So that's one thing. And then I think in terms of like a entrepreneurial approach or a business approach for me, like, I have an end goal of, I have a lot of end goals. Like, for me, I think I just wrote this on Twitter. I really want to own a home in New Orleans in the Garden District one day. And it's really expensive. So I have to think of what those mini goals again. How am I going to get there to get that house that I want? Right. Mm-hmm. Or if I want to retire in this state and own whatever, how am I going to get to that? I have so many different goals, and that's what really keeps me going. But I figure out what it takes to get there. And having mini goals instead of always looking at the bigger picture, they really help because I get to focus on one thing at a time. Mm-hmm. Whereas I think if you're only thinking of that bigger picture, anything could happen on your way there, right? So you have to have like an order. There has to be a path that you're taking, and focus on those first. And then one day before you know, you're going to look up and there's your goal. You did it, right? So yeah, that works for me.
No, that is so powerful. Thank you, Paris, so much for joining us today and being so candid in our conversation. I definitely took a lot away from this, and I'm reading chat now, and it looks like a lot of other people have as well. So thank you so much for doing this. This concludes our stream for today. And to our viewers, thank you as well for tuning in and chatting with us throughout. I hope you were able to leave us some valuable takeaways. If you'd like to get in touch with Paris, she can be reached at her Twitter handle there, Paris Athena, or pretty much anywhere else online, right? Under that name?
Yep. Yes.
Okay. Amazing. And also be sure to tune in tomorrow for another packed episode of Late Night Build with Michael Jolly. Just some last comments I want to share. This seems really positive. Paris has such a great voice. For the longest, gatekeeping was from our own people saying, yeah, that's really great. Well, it sounds like a lot of people have taken a lot of, great takeaway messages away from this.
Oh, good.
So, yes, thank you so much again for doing this. And thank you for tuning in. And hopefully you'll be able to find us on Twitter. Ask us any questions if you'd like on there, and I would be happy to answer them. So thank you again.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.